Everyone, I will now call this meeting of the Alabama Commission on Higher Education to order. I'd like to start out by asking Commissioner Bolden-Frost to lead us in prayer.
Let us bow. Heavenly Father, we come to you today with a grateful heart, thankful for the opportunity to meet virtually once again in support of higher education in the state of Alabama. We thank you for the blessings that you have shown towards each of us. Father, during this season of pandemic, we ask that you protect our students, our families, and the leadership represented here today. As we navigate this unprecedented time in history, we ask for wisdom, revelation, understanding, and the ability to focus on what is good for Alabama. We cast our care and concern over this meeting, the giving and the receiving of value, and we pray that the work that you have entrusted us with will be beneficial, done in excellence, and pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Bolden-Frost. That was wonderful. At this time, would the commissioners unmute and let's recite the Pledge of Allegiance together. If you'll all join in. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
United States of America
and to the republic
which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all. It's kind of funny to hear the echo. It's just everybody's not the same timing, but that's the world we live in. So, so we are able to hear our presenters at this time. Where everybody click the mute button on their point forward, and if anybody needs to speak, just unmute it at any time. To make this meeting run a little bit smoother, this is just a little Zoom protocol that we're going to ask today. I will ask Commissioner Bolden-Frost to make the motion to approve an item and Commissioner Crowe to second the motion. Dr. Purcell, please call the roll.
Charles Bunton.
Here.
Charles Sanders.
Here.
Ann Sermon. Norman Crowe.
Here.
Miranda Bolden-Frost, Vice Chair.
Here.
Timothy Guyan.
Here.
Paul Kennedy.
Present.
Amy Price.
here,
Larry Turner. Stan Pylant.
Here.
Stan Nelson.
Here.
Rod Scott.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Purcell. Our next item is the approval of the agenda. Chair entertains a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. Agenda is approved. Consideration of the minutes. Everyone should have had time to review the minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jim Purcell. We did have one correction. Commissioner Kennedy did abstain from one vote on the last meeting. We would like to make that slight revision.
Okay, excellent. Chair entertains a motion to approve the minutes of September 11th, 2020 meeting with that correction. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. Minutes are approved. Okay, at this time, I've got the chairman's report, and I just wanted to say good morning. Welcome to all the commissioners, the staff, and all of the representatives of the fine institutions all over Alabama. We welcome y'all today in this Zoom meeting. And last September, we didn't get a chance to appropriately thank Chairman Sanders for his time. So Dr. Purcell actually went to go see him, and look at that good-looking guy right there. I just, Charles did a wonderful job, and we just appreciate the time that he put into the commission. And that's actually probably the first time I've ever seen him without a tie on. But that looks really good. And we just, Chairman Sanders, we really appreciate your time and your efforts for the commission. At this time, per the commission's bylaws, as chairman, I'm required to appoint commissioners to each of our 2 standing committees. Based on that requirement, I would like to make the following appointments to the Academic Affairs Committee: Commissioner Price, Chairman; Commissioner Guyan, Commissioner Kennedy, Commissioner Sanders, and Commissioner Turner. In the Financial Affairs Committee, Commissioner Nelson is the chair, Commissioner Crowe, Commissioner Pilot, Commissioner Scott, and Commissioner Sermon. I'm also required to appoint an executive committee. The executive committee is empowered to act on behalf of the commission between regular scheduled meetings of the commission, with said action being subject to ratification by the full commission at a regular or special meeting held in accordance with all laws requiring open and public meetings. The bylaws state that the committee shall consist of the chairman, vice chairman, and such other commissioners as appointed by the chairman, the number of which shall not exceed 4. So the executive committee will be myself as chair, Vice Chair Bolden Frost, Academic Affairs Committee Chair Price, and Financial Affairs Committee Chair Nelson. It is also time to review Dr. Purcell's contract. I'd like to appoint Commissioner Sanders, Commissioner Scott, and myself to negotiate and execute a new contract, which we will do at the very beginning of the year. So that concludes my report. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Purcell for the Executive Director's report.
Well, good to see everybody today. Really wanted to talk about 2 particular initiatives as we move forward, and one is called Opt-in Alabama and the other one Retain Alabama. There's some things that we've actually had to address because of COVID. As you know, we've in this state, we were asked not to see anyone, and that has been the case. That has actually caused a problem with recruiting, and we actually had some of the campuses say, hey, you know, without people having the ACT taken in the spring, without their ability to see the campuses, you know, how are we going to try to work with kids that are coming to from high school? So they reached out to us to ask us to see if K through 12 would provide some information about our students who are rising juniors and seniors in high school. And of course, there's all these FERPA rules and everything that happens related to that. So we sort of worked out a deal where basically the ALSDE would send information to the schools about giving people an opportunity to agree to have their information sent. So we have communications going from the school to the high school students. They send their agreements and information about themselves to AIC. We send that information back to the institutions. And then they, of course, send institutions to those students, information to those students directly. This is sort of what the students will see. It's an opt-in survey. They have to indicate that, yes, I'd like to get information from the institutions. And once they say yes, they'll provide information about their high school experience, what their interest in colleges are, and things like that. And basically, the institutions will contact students that meet their criteria for admissions. And this is sort of what happens. Students get access to information on the state's institutions. The campuses basically get the information they would have gotten if they had career fairs and things of that nature. And then, of course, AIC sort of gets to be able to do one of the things that's on our mission. And that's basically that initiative is going quite well. The other one is sort of on the other end of that, which is about what we do to help retain Alabamians who graduate from our institutions to address the needs of our state and our economy. And this is a new
Let's talk some more. I mean, call me over the weekend, like if you think of something, or if I think of something,
Hey, Ryan, can you mute?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Ryan, Mr. Smith.
Appreciate it. Wish you well. If I don't talk to you between now and then. All right.
Okay, so this Retain Alabama is actually a combination of several initiatives, but it really came out of this employment outcomes report that really finally, for the first time, gave us an idea of how many of our graduating seniors actually are participating in Alabama's economy, how many remain there. Source to Remain Alabama is one initiative, and we'll talk about that in a second. But we're also trying to provide some way of helping students migrate to the location so they can maybe guarantee for utilities. So we've had legislation the last couple of years on that. We've been encouraging institutions for micro-credentialing. The credential registry is something that allows us to really identify credentials that people earn that may not be the traditional type, so the industry sort of knows about those. And then some legislative initiatives like AMSTEP, which is the student loan forgiveness for teachers in math and science, the Best and Brightest, where some communities actually have additional money to encourage people to move in their areas, and then some institutional specific research efforts that we'll be highlighting here in a second. So it really all comes out of this report. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, it's compelling reading for at least a couple nights as you try to go to sleep. And the big thing was that we only really retain about 57% of our graduates, and it actually gets lower than that as you go up to the degrees level. So the associates we actually retain fairly well, the bachelor's a little bit less, and then as you go up, less and less. So this is sort of how we compare the associates and the bachelor's. And you can sort of see that 1 year out, 3/4 of the associates do stay in our economy, but after about 5 years, the bachelor folks are still about 50-50, and in some majors even higher. The other issue is Alabama is actually pretty popular for out-of-state residents to come and get education here. Some of the legislators were concerned about the finding that not many of the non-Alabama residents actually stayed and were found in our workforce after 5 years. So we want to do some things to help encourage those people that have come to our state and found benefit in education to contribute to our economy. And you'll sort of see it varies by education and credentials. So here at the bachelor's level, if we educate somebody in education, well, we'll find them in the workforce 5 years later for really 2/3 of them. But in some professions, health professions, we do fine. But once you get down to engineering, less than half are found in the state in Alabama. And there is a high demand for engineers in the state. Same thing in sciences and physical science. Plus, some of the programs we have smaller numbers in, we just need to increase and work forwards on. So those are the idea around this Remain Alabama. The initial thought is to concentrate on the individuals in the STEM fields, but also in some other areas that we may have in high demand in the state. One thing that we want to provide the institutions, and for you institution guys, most likely you haven't seen this, but we've been working with the Labor Department to actually have individual reports for the institutions so that you can sort of see where your graduates go, what kind of salary they make in particular majors and by different populations. So this is actually the state of origin of the students. To the left there, there's your major production for the students in the last 2011, 12, 13, and 5 years after, how many are found. And of course, the nurses are found prevalently. Gives you the count by ethnicity. And if you actually click by particular degree count, it will actually change these numbers. It also shows you where these guys go to work. So that's pretty compelling as you seek to provide more opportunities for employment later on. And this all goes around this whole understanding that our economy is in a point of transition, in a point of reset with automation. The literature says we certainly need a large chunk of people at the associate degree level. We've done a lot of hardcore investment there, but what we haven't done is sort of concentrated on work-based type credentials and maintaining those students in the state at the bachelor and higher levels. And really 2/3 of the jobs predicted in Alabama will be at produced at a university degree. And that's from another report that was produced a few years back. The other issue is our population growth. We're slight decline, and that is based on 99% of all households in the census. Large job growth is projected, so we're either going to have our folks credentialed and skilled and staying in our state, or we'll have to be recruiting real hard for out-of-towners to come and participate in our economy. Here's the bottom line on most of these things. 1 in 5 out-of-state students are found in Alabama. We want to increase that number. And the other is even our resident students. 2/3 of the state students are found somewhere else after they graduate from college, and we have the 3rd worst at retaining our college graduates. We have to address that. So what is the plan? The solution is to identify and systematically address the obstacles obstacles that discourage university graduates. These are our starting assumptions that they're not aware of the opportunities and that we need to actually construct initiatives that showcase Alabama and provide experiences for students so that they can interact with students and with business and industry. The first thing we want to do this year is actually assess whether our assumptions are correct. So we're actually developing a survey to be administered in the spring on our campuses. We have the career offices and the workforce persons from the universities. And I will say that this particular start off is with the universities, which is where we have a large participation rate like we have in the community colleges. I think the community colleges have been well supported in the last few years to make sure that we align their efforts with the needs of the business. So we provided some money with the career offices and the workforce people to help us connect this survey to students by sending them an email to the survey. In the future, we plan to have a strong marketing strategy, job search component, and provide some materials related to this. And this is some examples of what we would be doing. This is what Louisville does to try to get people to come to their town. This is Dakota Roots, which is a strong initiative to have people remain in South Dakota, which is odd that they don't say South Dakota Roots, but that's what that website is. New Hampshire talks about how fun it is to go skiing and look at tree leaves. West Virginia actually has a sort of a leadership component where they actually take rising seniors who are the rock stars in their institutions and train them on how to be leaders in the state in addition to finding job opportunities there. Maine, they've got a hard time recruiting people to work, so they just really have a job board. It's real basic, but what it does is encourage it. A lot of states are pushing real hard to maintain where their graduates are going. Rhode Island, where I had worked prior, has an initiative where actually if you have a bachelor's or master's in the science fields, that you can get up to $4,000 or $6,000 per year, up to 4 years if you live actually in Rhode Island. Of course, New York has a loan repayment program, which is similar to what we do with the teachers in the AMSTEP program in Alabama. And here's Arkansas. The Waltons gave $1 million to help encourage people to live up near their home base. And in that $6 million, if you move to Arkansas, they're going to give you $10,000 and a street bike or a mountain bike. And if you are not inclined to be a biker, you can get an annual membership to their world-class museums and cultural institutions. Now, for us, what we're suggesting is that we just help support efforts for community leaders to come to our campuses and to offer career exploration and soft skill training for our soon-to-be graduates. Because one of the things we want to do is to make sure that they're ready for prime time. You know, I'm more of a techie myself, and I didn't necessarily have the social etiquette or skills that I needed to be a good candidate, I guess, for things right out of college. And what we need to do is make sure our people are ready for that, in addition to having the technical and academic prowess that they've illustrated by graduating from our institutions. The other opportunity is actually to encourage communities to support this effort by actually having job fairs and community open houses in those towns so that people who are interested in staying in Alabama can come and actually experience the hospitality of those communities and think about them. One example is the Best and Brightest initiative, which comes out of Decatur. And what they do is if you move into Decatur, buy a house, and agree to participate in some social activities and social organizations in that community, they will actually help pay off student loans for you in that community, similar to what they do in Rhode Island. We actually had legislative support for one in Marengo County. And this is important right now, guys, because as you call, we've had several recessions. In 2008, it sort of started like this, and the recession knocked us all out. And then, of course, we've had a couple good 10 years. Everything's going well. We're thinking that we're brilliant in the stock market. Everything's wonderful, 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 wonderful. We're just rocking and rolling. Everybody's thinking about retirement. And all of a sudden, COVID kicks in, and it's instantly beyond what we experienced in 2008. And we're having to address this. But at moments like this, we need to address what our economies in the future are going to look like. This is a map of the South, and you can sort of see a lot of Americana and distressed America that actually shows declines in job opportunities, because the growth that occurred since the recession in 2007, 2008, 2/3 of those jobs actually happened in 25 cities. But the rest of us were down 3%, and a lot of it was transitioning from jobs to having the robots take over our world. But this is what they say may look like for the future for everybody. So most of us, yes, county is going to lose population, but there's a big part of populations that really have high job demand, and you can sort of see on the Alabama map where those places are. And we need to definitely make sure that we can help those economies optimize this opportunity that we have. It's really dependent on our ability to provide our growing local economies with the skills and credentials they need, both at the associate, certificate, and bachelor or higher level. So are we going to take advantage of this small window of opportunity for change? I think we can if we stay focused on really what state institutions are about, which is really to help bring forth the capacity of the state and its economy. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll hand it back to you for discussion items.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Purcell. I think we would all agree that we need to do a better job of keeping our graduates in Alabama to make Alabama their home. We will move into the discussion items now. The first discussion item, we are honored to
Chairman Button, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Commissioner Pilot. May I add?
Yes,
just a
sir.
couple things
Absolutely.
to that? I just want to take a second and recognize the efforts that's gone into this Retain Alabama, as well as the other initiative that Dr. Purcell's presented. But I look at these slides and I see a lot of work that's gone into this, and I know this is going to be a big undertaking, and it's going to take all of us to make this happen. We know we've got an item line budgeted that's going to be proposed in the 2021 budget for this, so we may have to make a few phone calls to some legislators to get this done. But all I wanted to do is just take a second and just recognize the work that has been done by Dr. Purcell on this. Very good.
Thank you, Commissioner Pilot. And any commissioners at any time, if you want to speak up, please just, I'm going to keep cruising through the agenda, but if you want to speak, by all means, unmute and just say what's on your heart. But anyway, thank you, Commissioner Pilot. Appreciate that. So we're honored today to have a student with us, and I told her that we all play nice, so we'll all be very attentive, and I know she's going to do a great job. But at this time, I'll ask Mrs. Gunter to introduce our established Program of Stimulant Competitive Research Graduate Research Scholars Program student.
Thank you, Chairman Button. Before I introduce our student presenter, I'd like to give a little background about EBSCOR and how it is related to AIC. EBSCOR receives state funding through a line item in AIC's budget. Alabama EBSCOR is a consortium of the 8 Alabama PhD granting institutions, the Department of Commerce, AIC, and other business and government entities. The goal of EBSCOR is to strengthen Alabama's research capabilities, which will in turn then assist in the development of new high-tech companies and bring in more federal research dollars. And I must say, they have been very successful in bringing in federal research dollars. This year, they brought in over $17 million. Over the last decade, they have brought in 268 research grants, totaling $165 million of research funding for the state. 4 years ago, Alabama EBSCOR developed Alabama's first science and technology plan, which has been formally adopted by the state. That's just a little bit of background about EBSCOR itself. Now we'll look at the next slide and talk about how it boils down into the student. The Graduate Research Scholars Program does provide funding for graduate students who perform high-tech federal EBSCOR research. This program has helped to fund 67 Master of Science degrees and 204 PhDs. Today, we are happy to hear from one of those students, Sankita Nayar, who works in the UAB Epilepsy Research Center. She recently picked up a couple of awards, the UAB Psychology Department Outstanding Graduate Student and the UAB College of Arts and Science Dean's Award. Her research involves different brain regions that affect sight, sound, and cognitive functions such as attention and problem solving. She is utilizing her findings to better assess disease states by combining various non-invasive neuroimaging techniques into a single tool. Today, she will be presenting to us Seeing the Whole Picture, Advancements in Human Brain Imaging to Study Epilepsy. Sankita?
Hi, everybody. I just want to say thank you so much for having me today. It really is an honor to be here. And I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about what the Graduate Research Scholars Program has afforded me in the past couple years, and a little bit about my research as well. As Ms. Gunter said, my name is Sankita Nair. I'm a fifth-year graduate student in the Behavioral Neuroscience program at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I work in the Epilepsy Research Center under Dr. Jerzy Szaflarski. Oh, can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. So I actually moved to Birmingham from San Diego, California in 2016 to study human brain imaging tools after receiving my master's degree in research psychology specifically. And in 2017, just the following year, I was a recipient of the GRSP funding for 3 years. And the only way that I can describe what that funding allowed me to do is collect data for my dream project. I came out here with very specific idea of what I was interested in studying, and securing my own funding allowed me the flexibility and the independence to actually study what I came out to study. Brain imaging studies can be very expensive because of the time it takes to collect data on these high efficiency machines. And I believe that having the freedom to study what you're truly passionate about is a gift for any young scientist in my position. Among other things that the GRSP has offered me during my time at UAB is building community and networking opportunities across the Southeast. The parent study that my grant is associated with actually investigates memory function in patients with epilepsy, but also rodent models of epilepsy, which I think boils down to involving 3 different universities in the Southeast and a diverse team of dedicated research scientists that range from psychologists to systems neuroscientists to physicists. The photograph pictured, my primary mentor is pictured at center, Dr. Szaflarski, and the research scientists to his left and right are other scientists at UAB that I would have not necessarily had the opportunity to work so closely with if not for the opportunities afforded to me by the GRSP funding. I truly believe that successful hands-on education takes a village, and I believe that that's something the GRSP afforded me in a couple different avenues. One of which being I had the opportunity to mentor various undergraduates during the summer through start to finish their own hands-on neuroimaging projects. And I believe that they benefited greatly from this experience. As an undergraduate, being able to run your own study is a pretty big deal. But I was also able to hone my skills as a teacher and a mentor in a setting that not a lot of graduate students have access to in that specific way. And then finally, through EPSCoR and the GRSP program, there were many opportunities to network with other students as part of the GRSP program. And of course, that involved meeting students outside of my specific neuroscience biomedical area. And I think that's really valuable for other graduate students to connect with each other in that way as well. So we're switching gears a little bit to talk about my research. And I think it kind of boils down to when and where are working memory in a healthy human brain. We as humans have a type of temporary workspace in our minds where we're able to process and manipulate information. This space, which is also called our working memory, allows us to be flexible in how we interact with our environment. We are able to stay focused on a task and block out distractions or remember all the things we need to grab before leaving the house for work, like our hand sanitizer and our masks. Memory plays a critical role in how we make sense of the information in the world around us. And though we know a lot about what working memory is, we as scientists still have a lot of questions about how it works in the brain. As the tools that we use to study human behavior advance, so do the questions we're able to actually ask about memory and how it works. The next slide, please. So thank you. So one of the oldest tools that we have to study how the brain functions is pictured on the left. It involves placing electrodes directly on the scalp surface to record signals that represent communication between different areas of the brain. And this provides us with information about how the brain is processing things in milliseconds. A relatively newer tool, our UAB facility is our MRIs pictured on the right, gives us very specific information of where brain activity is taking place over a period of a couple seconds. With functional magnetic resonance imaging, we're able to essentially peer into a working brain and make sense of the different brain areas that are contributing to a task. Every method that we currently have as scientists to study how the brain works without harming it has certain limitations. Alone, the tools that we've talked about today only provide one type of information about how the brain functions. While one can tell us when brain activity is taking place, the other can tell us where. And my question is, what if we're able to use these two tools together and maximize the strengths of both? Okay, so the next slide, thank you. So at this point, we're going to shift gears a little bit to movie magic. And you're probably, this diagram has nothing to do with brain imaging, but I like to think about advancements in brain imaging tools similarly to developments in filmmaking. This is a chronophone. It was a critical piece of equipment that allowed early cinematographers to sync sound and film and create talkies, the movies that we know today. Though audio recording technology had existed at the time, before the development of the chronophone, movies were largely silent. Cassette tapes and silent films, they all share one type of information, whether that's auditory or visual. But over time, these techniques were integrated to produce moving pictures with sound. Yeah, thanks. So my work in the Epilepsy Research Center focuses on building a pipeline to process and analyze these two types of data and be able to answer questions about both when and where brain activity is taking place during working memory. I'm interested in finding ways to merge these tools, much like a chronophone did for sound and film. So this slide is a little complicated, but what I really want to focus on is that bottom row. The goal of my project is trying to take two types of information and combine them in a way that makes sense to find out more information about when and where. The next slide, please. Thank you. So many people are familiar with epilepsy and know that epilepsy involves seizures and bodily convulsions, but many patients with epilepsy also suffer from long-term working memory problems. We hope to use this pipeline that we're developing to answer questions about how working memory differs in patients with epilepsy. Is the timing of information transfer different in patients? Is that limited to specific areas of the brain? If we're able to combine information from different types of tools, we may be able to answer more specific questions about how memory is impacted in patients with epilepsy, and this might even help lead to intervention approaches or things that can help us more direct target memory in these patients and hopefully help with those memory deficits over time. Like advancements in audiovisual technology, this leading approach to studying human brain function involves combining information across different methods to provide a more comprehensive view of the processes underlying working memory. So thank you so much for your time. This is typically where scientists thank everybody who's ever been involved with the project, and the funding is always top notch. We really couldn't do it without all of the resources that are afforded by this funding organization, the EPSCoR program. So thank you so much. And of course, people in my lab, my friends, my dogs, you know, thank you. Oh, and we got married in the pandemic on our balcony. So I thought that'd be fun to include. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions or anything that I can help answer?
Ms. Nair, in light of Dr. Purcell's report, will you stay in Alabama after you've completed your education?
So I think that's a really critical question. And The answer, I think, if you had asked me just a couple months ago, was absolutely yes. A lot of the postdoc opportunities that I was looking at were in the state and at UAB specifically. And I think the networking opportunities provided by the different scientists that I was involved with. However, I'm a couple now, and my husband recently got a job actually back in California. He's a research scientist as well, and that's been a part of our plan now, just as of a couple months ago in COVID. So I think Birmingham has a very specific and special place in our heart, and I don't think it's just talk. We talk a lot about returning, but yeah, I think the job market is kind of rough right now. I mean, I think this year, especially with COVID. So I think the report was really interesting for me specifically, being in this position when both of us had been looking in the state, and also considering how COVID has impacted funding. I think watching my husband navigate the field of applying to postdoctoral positions and trying to figure out who has funding, that's a really big factor. And I just think that's an interesting component to what it's like to be on the job market right now as a fresh graduate. I'm not graduated as of yet, but no, unfortunately, that's not a part of the plan right now.
Wonderful. Any more questions? Well, congratulations.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice job. Thank you. Very nice.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and I also wanted to comment as well. Very good job. Congratulations on this research. May I ask, what inspired you to go into this particular area of research?
Absolutely. I actually, in my bachelor's program, had the opportunity to work with children on the autism spectrum. And working with these kids, I've always been fascinated by brain development, and just kids are great and funny. And the more you know about what's going on in their brains, the more their behavior makes sense. And so that's what my master's work was, actually delving into brain imaging techniques, specifically looking at children with autism. Autism is what brought me out to UAB, but I ended up switching labs and working in the epilepsy center, mostly because of the tools and techniques that were available there. So something that I will say about UAB in particular, and the techniques and the tools that are there are unique to the state. One of the tools that I mentioned and I'm using for my project is there are very few in the country. And so there were definitely, yeah, autism brought me into the imaging field, but I think my passion really is with the tools and the techniques, because there's a lot of overlap and strengths and weaknesses, and I find that really interesting as well.
Thank you.
Excuse me. This is Rod Scott. Ms. Nair, I really enjoyed your presentation. I think the study of the brain is the new frontier for medical science. And
absolutely,
just a very simple question: does there need to be more significant breakthroughs in the equipment that is used in the study of your field?
I believe absolutely. And I think what you mentioned about the new frontier feels very relevant to the field of neuroscience and neuroimaging. So I think with neuroscience, a lot of the people that I actually know at UAB do animal work. So they're able to go inside, cut things up, stain it, work very specifically with the tissue. And I'm much more on the non-invasive side, where we don't want to harm the human brain if we want to study how it's working. And I think the more we know about what the limitations of the tools are, the more we're able to address that specifically and capitalize on their strengths. So I think that there could be a twofold approach to where techniques are going to studying the human brain without harming it. I think one approach is, the development of the tools and furthering the actual technology, as you mentioned. And I think another approach is something that I'm working on, which is how can we use what we have to provide more information? And I do believe that it is a twofold approach. Both are going to help us move forward in the field of neuroscience, I believe.
Wonderful. Well, Ms. Nair, all the best of luck for you going forward. Congratulations on your marriage. You know, you may want to look into public speaking because I think you just did a fantastic job. And we may even
Thank
submit
you.
you into a TED Talk or something like that.
Thank you. That's the dream.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again. And if you can ever get back to Alabama, try to. I know Birmingham would love to have you guys.
Absolutely. I love Birmingham so much, and Alabama. We absolutely love it there. So
Wonderful.
thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your time and all the best. Next,
Thank you.
Mrs. Gunter will present the legislative agenda.
Thank you, Chairman Button. The 2021 legislative session is just around the corner, and I would like to say thank you, Commissioner Pilot. I will be calling on all of you, I'm sure, at some point during the session. It starts February 2nd, and on January 26th, Dr. Purcell will be making his presentation at the pre-session legislative budget hearings. At that time, he will be introducing 6 new initiatives on AIC's agenda. These requests are designed to assist the state's colleges and universities in their efforts to support students as well as the state's economy. Also, they are in line with the goals in AIC's strategic plan for higher ed that I will be discussing later on the agenda. The first initiative is Retain Alabama. Dr. Purcell has discussed this. It is aimed at increasing the number of university graduates living and working in the state. Economists have concluded that nearly all economic growth is driven by college-educated workers. Retain Alabama will be aimed at informing soon-to-be graduates of the job opportunities and the livability of Alabama's communities, both urban and rural. And the next slide, the Credential Directory, will catalog Alabama's workforce-oriented training opportunities. As part of Governor Ivey's efforts to build career pathways across Alabama's 16 core industry sectors, we will need not only 2- and 4-year degrees, but also credentials of value. These credentials will include credit and non-credit training offered by the state's colleges and universities, businesses, and industry trade groups. AIC does maintain information on all degrees, non-degree credentials, and short-term certificates offered across the state. In the next slide, performance funding. AIC is working with the task force of institutional campus leaders, legislative staff, and an outside consultant, HCM strategist, to develop criteria for the performance funding initiative. Performance funding will be aimed at rewarding colleges and universities that show improvement of student outcomes. Emphasis will be placed on degree production and other measures of student success. In the next slide, the Higher Education Micro-Credential Fund. It will support the development of short-term certificates at the state's colleges and universities that lead to industry-recognized credentials. These short-term certificates can be incorporated into existing academic and vocational programs, or they can serve as a standalone curriculum available to anyone wanting to enhance their work skills. These credentials will require both institutional and state approval. And in the next slide, the Alabama College Attainment Network. Funds are being requested for this initiative. It is intended to increase college readiness, access, and completion. Part of Governor Ivey's Success Plus initiative targets an additional 500,000 highly skilled workers by 2025. The state program will work with the National College Attainment Network to promote educational pathways supporting post-secondary degree attainment. And finally, I have to ask the question, are you ready for college, both academically and financially? With limited state financial resources, we need to ensure the best use of the funds available. A decade ago, a financial aid study was conducted to assess the effectiveness of public student financial aid in the state. With 10 years of data, we now want to go back and conduct a student financial aid assistance study to show how to best utilize the funds for the optimum return on today's investment. As you can see, this package does include issues that are related to the classroom, both virtual and in person, on into the workplace. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the AIC legislative agenda. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mrs. Gunter? Thank you. And I just wanted to, Mrs. Gunter, please, rely on us if you need the commissioners in any way. Once this gets going, if we need to reach out to any of our legislators, please let us know. That's what we're here for, and we need to be proactive about that. Just wanted to remind everybody, if you'll please mute the volume on your Zoom. That way we won't have any background noise. So at this time, next, Dr. McGill will present the regional workforce profiles.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here and share with commissioners the results of our Alabama's regional workforce profile efforts. You can see from this first slide that we've been working in partnership with the Governor's Office of Education and Workforce Transformation, with Alabama Works and the Regional Workforce Councils. And this has all been under the aegis of Lumina Foundation funding for Equity Leadership Acceleration Grant, which I have talked to the commission about before in previous projects. So one of the outcomes of this grant funding has been to work with a vendor named Equivolve Consulting. They're based out of Baltimore. And they have done some work in Alabama already with the Mobile Talent Hub. And so they're familiar with our workforce regions and our overall State Success Plus plan. And they helped us put together 2-page profiles for each of the 7 workforce regions in our state. And those profiles include an overview of the working age population. You can see here what a 2-page one looks like. Working age population, regional education snapshots, a workforce snapshot, some factors that contribute to employment access, and then some findings that help synthesize the information on this 2-page profile. So we're going to go through each one of those sections so you don't have to squint and try and see the information on this. But these all are real data that pertains to Region 1. So there are 6 others of these. We will be releasing them publicly probably next week. We're coordinating with our other communications partners around that. But if anybody does want an advanced copy, you're welcome to email us and we'll be certainly happy to share that with you. So again, this is Region 1. The data that populated this is from the American Community Survey, which is a US Census product that comes out every year. It's based on population sampling and not on decennial census that everybody does every year, or every 10 years, excuse me. But it gives us a reasonable sense of the magnitude of the populations in each of our regions. So we were looking specifically here at the working age population, 16 to 54. And I've said before, there's certainly people over 54 who are in the workforce, but the idea here is that these profiles are going to be helpful for policy making for the next 10 or 15 years, even though we can update them more regularly than that. But if you're developing programs, you want to kind of aim those earlier in the pipeline. So for Region 1, they've got almost 440,000 people in their workforce, and a slight decline over the past 5 years of about 1%, which is pretty much on par with other regions in the state. In this middle section, you can see where there are these red bars. Those represent the age distribution of the working population in Region 1. And then the gray bars back behind them is the breakdown for the state. So that way you can kind of see how this region compares with the state overall. Down below, we've got the overall percent living in poverty, which Region 1 is a little bit below. And then over to the left, we kind of skipped by it, but there was a distribution by race ethnicity. There you go. So looking to the next slide, the education snapshot. So over here on the right, we've got regional education and training providers. That's post-secondary level. So all of our public universities, many of whom are on this call, those are in the dark blue dots. We've got our community colleges in the light blue dots. WIOA eligible providers are those workforce folks who can train individuals who are through the Career One Stop programs. our Office of Apprenticeship Programs. And then we did also capture where they exist, private, nonprofit, higher ed institutions. And in this region, there are no for-profits. Over here on the left, you can see the overall, what we might call attainment level, the highest level of education for that population. Up here in this graph, it's 25 to 54. And you can see that for this population, only 24% have a bachelor's degree or higher. So one thing that you could kind of take away from this is that even in Region 1, there are a lot of adults out there who don't yet have post-secondary training, and they may be potential new enrollments or new programs that could be developed for them, especially on the credentialing front, like Dr. Purcell was talking about before. This figure, I do just want to call attention to it down below, the 14,000 youth 16 to 24 who are not in school, that's not in high school, not in college, and not employed. They're totally disengaged from the workforce. And so that figure, can help guide development of programs to re-engage those folks and hopefully get them into one of our post-secondary institutions. Next slide. So now we're looking at employment for the workforce. And again, this is the whole age group of 16 to 54. We split them into two groups over here on the left for employed and then not employed, where not employed includes unemployed and also not in the labor force at all. And there are some people who are always going to choose not to be in the labor force or can't work for some reason. And so in Region 1, when you look down, this region across all race ethnicities is pretty close to 60-70%, which is approaching about as high as it can get. 75-80% is about as high as you might see, because they're always going to be that portion who can't work. On the wage front, we split the wages between $35,000 and above, that's in the green, and below $35,000. The idea there was that $35,000 represents a sort of self-sufficiency threshold, and there is a greater disparity among groups. And then over here to the right, we took the overall COVID claims based on data from our own Department of Labor through the end of September. So this might be higher now, but these are unique individuals. There were 160,000 of them in Region 1 who filed unemployment claims during the COVID period. And that represents over a third, 37% of the whole working population in the region. So out of every 3 people, at least one was filing an unemployment claim in Region 1. Next slide. Here we tried to capture some high-level points about some of the factors that might either be barriers or supports for people seeking employment. Sometimes we hear about transportation, and Region 1 here is doing pretty well. There are only 1/5 of the population that has a long commute. Only 4,000 people don't have a car. In the healthcare realm, a full 82% have health insurance. Broadband is very high. And over to the right, we also looked at how COVID was impacting the region in terms of the mortality rates. And Region 1 has a significantly lower rate than the state overall. So key findings, we tried to synthesize some of the information in the profile here. I won't read these for you, but the idea is that these would be jumping off points for somebody who's trying to digest this, and hopefully providing some further thoughts to engage them. Next slide. So last, just to think more about what these profiles might be used for. And like I said, this data, we have one for each of the 7 regions. Next steps are going to be to distribute them and promote them, and also start using them as conversation starters or tools for asset mapping, strategic planning, program planning, and engagement between the higher education sector at the 2- and 4-year level, workforce providers, regional workforce councils and business partners. And the hope is that, this can help to initiate new programs and partnerships that will support the state's overall goal to meet those 500,000 additional skilled workers and also get us back to the pre-pandemic employment levels. And that's it for me.
Wonderful. Any questions for Dr. McGill?
This is Rod Scott. And I just wanted to thank both you and Margaret, and I know Margaret's not online right now, for the work that you've done. I think it's an excellent study, and I look forward to having future discussions.
Thank you very much.
And Margaret, you seem to be back. Thank you for the presentation that you did. Really enjoyed it. I thought it was awesome. You guys are really on the forefront of connecting education with workforce, and again, thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Scott, and you can't get away from me. I know that I will be seeing you at the State House.
That's great. Dr. McGill, thank you for all of your research. That's wonderful. Okay, so at this time, we're going to move into the decision items. Just to remind all the commissioners, each decision item is voted on individually. Any questions may be directed to the staff presenter. Our first decision item is the 2019-2020 AIC Annual Report presented by Mrs. Gunter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, you received a copy of the annual report recently with your packet, but I'm going to highlight some of the things that we did from October 1st of last year through September 30th of this year. The most notable occurrence, of course, during this fiscal year has been the COVID pandemic. AIC worked closely with institutions to release pertinent information related to higher ed and the pandemic. Last March, a link on AIC's homepage was created to provide daily local, state, and federal coronavirus updates, along with individual institutional fall term reopening information. Even though we took a sidetrack in dealing with COVID, there were statutory responsibilities that went on. Following our statutory guidelines in academia, 43 new programs of study were approved. That was a slight increase from the prior year. The top 4 areas have remained consistent, with business management and marketing taking the top spot. That's followed by health professions and related clinical sciences, engineering, and education. Mechanic and repair technologies replaced computer and information sciences as number 5. This marked the 4th year of the state's participation in the National Council of State Authorization Reciprocity Agreements. NC-SARA allows interstate offerings of post-secondary distance ed courses and programs. AIC will continue serving as the state portal entity to administer and manage Alabama's NC-SARA institutions for a second 5-year term. Currently, we have 23 universities and 16 community college participants in the program. The Academic Common Market is a tuition savings program for college students in the SREB's 16 member states who want to pursue degrees not offered in their home state. This year, 235 out-of-state residents enrolled at Alabama institutions through the Common Market. 109 Alabama residents enrolled in degree programs at out-of-state tuitions. The Doctoral Scholars Program we have been involved with since 1993, and now we have 137 Alabama graduates, with 80% of those employed in higher education. Multiple reports were generated throughout the year from information from the Alabama statewide student database. The database now contains over 12.5 million student records. And in addition to the regulatory functions that AIC did throughout the year, the Commission has served as the fiscal agent for 18 budgetary line items. And now on to the update on the state plan. Commissioners who were serving on the board in December of 2017 approved AIC's higher education strategic plan that runs through 2030. 5 priorities were identified to establish benchmarks and to track progress over the 12-year period. Because of the strong correlation between education attainment and state wealth, we found that we must invest in the most important aspect of the state's economic infrastructure, human capital. Hence the title, Building Human Capital. Alabama has the twofold challenge. One is to optimize the strengths of the successful communities that are showing sustainable results. The other is to assist economically challenged communities and counties in establishing a workable plan for new economic realities. There has to be a strong partnership between education and business and industry. This strategic plan priorities address the essential need to build our human capital for the educational path to Alabama's economic success. So as we move to the next slide, priority 1, improving access. College readiness really does have two components. Is the student academically prepared, and do they have the financial means for higher education? We did see an increase from fall 2018 to fall 2019 in the number of public high school graduates who were better prepared academically for college. Financially, the legislature has responded favorably to our request for additional student aid funding over the past 3 years. Those programs that are administered by AIC include need-based aid, student grant, the Alabama National Guard Educational Assistance Program, police officers and firefighter survivors educational assistance, and Alabama Math and Science Teacher Education, known as AMSTEP. In the next slide, priority 2, enhancing student success. Those college-prepared students that were identified in priority 1 meant fewer requiring remediation. Educators have been proactive in identifying early warning signs and intervention strategies for struggling students. There was a 2% decline from 2018 to 19, and high school students were getting an early start on their college credits through the dual enrollment program that saw a major increase from 2018 to 19. Priority 3, enhancing STEM programs. A key factor in economic growth is the ability to create, build, and maintain complex objects. The more individuals with science, technology, engineering, and math skills, the greater the ability to move the economy forward. We did see a slight drop in STEM enrollees and graduates, but efforts are underway to encourage more students to choose a STEM field. The state-funded AMSTEP program repays federal student loans for math and science teachers in public high schools. Individual communities are offering incentives to STEM graduates who are willing to relocate to their area. And if Retain Alabama receives funding, it will target students in STEM programs with a 3.0 or greater GPA. Priority 4, developing Alabama's economy and workforce. A major focus on the needs of business and industry is an essential element of Alabama's economic growth, and this year's Employment Outcomes Report emphasized the value of public higher education in the state by analyzing employment outcomes for graduates. One of those categories was salaries by degree, as you see on the next chart. This chart specifies that salaries in red for 2017 undergraduate certificate holders, it went through terminal degrees just 1 year following graduation. The blue columns that you see reflect 2013 graduates 5 years post-graduation. It does show an upward trend in salaries for certificate all the way through terminal degree holders. Priority 5 is organizational effectiveness and efficiency. Effective and efficient were 2 words pertinent to higher education this year due to the mid-spring semester change of plans initiated by the pandemic. Institutions stepped up to the plate by being good stewards of their available resources in order to keep their operations viable. This ETF appropriations chart shows there has not been much significant change in funding over a 3-year period. As stated in the beginning, Alabama's future is dependent on its ability to develop human capital. These 5 priorities identify steps that are necessary for the success of students, institutions, businesses, and the economic growth of the entire state. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my comments on the annual report and update of AIC's State Plan for Higher Education. The staff recommends the board approve and accept the 2019-20 AIC annual report.
Excellent. The chair entertains a motion to approve the 2019-2020 AIC annual report.
Make a motion to approve. Rod Scott.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Ms. Gunter, I had a question. Who all gets this annual report? It's an excellent document.
It's sent out to the legislature, to the governor, and everyone in basically government positions. And we also post it on our website. It will go on the website as soon as this meeting is concluded.
Great. All in favor say by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And all opposed by like sign. The 2019 annual report is approved.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Our next decision item is B, the executive budget request for fiscal year 2021-2022 presented by Mrs. Harris.
Good morning. I will be presenting to you today decision item B, the executive budget request for FY22, and you can find this on page 7. The Code of Alabama, Title 41, Chapter 19, Section 6A3 requires each state agency to prepare a budget request for the next fiscal year. AIC on this request, which was submitted on November the 2nd, 2020, and any changes made today will be processed through a budget request revision. AIC is requesting $58,581,792 for FY22. Of this amount, $145,553 is from state appropriated funds. We have 37 programs that are in this budget and 6 appropriation units. On this particular slide, you will see the 6 new programs that Dr. Purcell discussed in his executive director report, and also you will see what Mrs. Gunter discussed in her legislative agenda item. So you will see that these are the 6 programs, and you'll see the amounts that are on this particular slide. Now, in doing an assumption for this budget request, we are asking only a minimal of 3% increase. And that is for our planning and coordination, the main operating program for the commission. This increase is asked for because of major termination costs for several senior staff retirement, billing operations, and rent expenses, UPS, SHEO dues, as well as comptroller charges. There's a 19.37% increase being made for our only state level need-based student aid program, which is the Alabama Student Assistance Program. This increase will bring this program in alignment with the Alabama Education Grant Program, which is directed toward students at the state, private, not-for-profit institutions and selected private for-profit institutions. Also, a 3% was asked for several other programs that we administer. The Alabama Student Grant Program that we just mentioned that we want to bring the Alabama Student Assistant in line with. The Alabama National Guard, the Police Officer and Firefighters Survivors Education Assistant Program, the Alabama Math and Science Teacher Program, the Birmingham Promise Scholarship Program, the Southern Region Education Board, known as SREB, the Network of Alabama Academic Libraries, and the Articulation and General Studies Committee, known as STARS, and also EBSCOR, which is was by our presenter, the program that she discussed as well. Now, all the other programs that are in our budget, we're asking level funding. On this particular slide, as you can see, O&M is asking for 3%, but overall for the 172 appropriation, it's only 2.71%. Now you can see with student assistant, there's an 8.36%, 80,000 of this student financial aid study would be a new program, but the biggest percent is for the Alabama Student Assistance Program, which is the program that we want to bring in line with the Alabama Education Grant Program. Also, you can see a large percent there under the 152 appropriation, the 608.72%. Now this percent is basically for those other 6 programs that has already been discussed. So if we're funded for these programs, all of this money basically will be going for the need for the individual programs that are established. O&M is the umbrella. So O&M will take care of all the expenses that incur for these programs, which include doing their budgets, their operation plans, any payments or anything that's the MOUs, or anything that's necessary to actually administer these programs. So although there's a big percent there, please keep in mind that percentage is for the programs themselves to administer the program, and the planning and coordination will actually be doing having the human bodies to operate these programs. On this particular slide, you will see a continuation of the different programs that we administer. As stated, there's no funds requested for our 189 appropriation. These funds are mostly passed through, and we are not requesting any additional funds for these appropriations. The deferred maintenance is no longer being requested. And this particular page also shows you the amount of money that we receive from the Coronavirus Relief Fund for any PPE supplies that we purchase. This particular slide here gives you a breakdown by the major object codes. And if you would look at the 1100 object code, you will see that 50.02% is the largest percent on this particular slide. That's because that's our grants and benefits and claims. That's where we pay all our payments for the different institutions, for the students, for the National Guard, and for Alabama Student Assistance Program, Alabama Student Grant Program, police and firefighters, AMSTEP, all the programs that we administer. The grants and benefit line shows that 50.2%. And the other percentages that you see is basically in the benefit line, and that's to take care of all these programs, the 37 programs that we administer. And this concludes my presentation for today. The commission is asking that you approve the executive budget request for FY22. And I'll be glad to entertain any questions if you have any for me at this time.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Harris, for all of your work. I just wanted to remind the commissioners, with the awkwardness of this Zoom and as far as us taking minutes for the Zoom meeting, I will ask that Commissioner Bolden Frost make all of the motions to approve, and that Commissioner Crowe second the motion, just so we can get through these decision items and it's recorded properly in the minutes. So at this time, the chair entertains a motion to approve the executive budget request for fiscal year 2021-2022.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I serve on the Coaco RC&D Board of Directors and as an advisor to the Walker County Soil and Water Conservation District. Since the RC&D and the Soil and Water Conservation Committee both are line items in this commission's budget, I believe I should abstain from voting on them.
Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. All in favor of approving, say aye.
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 And all opposed, like sign. The Executive Committee request for fiscal year 2021-2022 is approved.
Mr. Chairman, I abstain.
The executive budget request for fiscal year 2021-2022 is approved. Let the record show that Commissioner Kennedy abstained. Our next decision item is item C, the consolidated budget recommendation for fiscal year 2021 to 2022, presented by Mrs. Cagle.
Commissioners, Section 1659B of the Code of Alabama states that the Commission shall present to each institution and the Governor and the Legislature a single unified budget report containing budget recommendations for the separate appropriations to each of the institutions. And this is what we're doing today. Starting on page 17 of your packet, you will find the consolidated budget recommendation for fiscal year 2021-2022. In developing the consolidated budget recommendation, or the CBR, the following needs to be considered. There's a cap that's placed on the ETF appropriation due to something called the Rolling Reserve Act. That means there's only X amount of money that can be spent every year for the ETF. We look at revenue projections for the ETF. We look at new initiatives that are being considered. Then there's the split of the ETF between higher ed, K-12, and other education-related lines, and the amounts that were requested by the institutions. The recommendation is based on the following. The funds needed to cover a TRS, that's the retirement rate, increase for the 2- and 4-year institutions. Funds for a rate increase that's mandated for the PHIP retirees' health insurance for public senior institutions who do not participate in PHIP. That's all institutions except A&M, Athens, and Jacksonville. And the funds needed to be appropriated so the institutions receive a 3% increase over the amount that was appropriated for fiscal year 2021, which that's about $47 million. Then there's statewide lines that were recommended for various amounts, and that's about $6 million. Included in this amount, the $6 million, are the funds that for AIC that you just approved. Now you might think that looks a little strange since we requested more than that, but the statewide lines, which you can find, start on page 20 of your packet. One line requested $15 million less for 2022 than for 21, so that kind of balanced out some of the other requests, so that's why it's only showing up at $6 million. If the staff recommendation is approved by you, this would mean that we're recommending an increase for the 4-year institutions of $42,931,362, an increase for the 2-year public institutions of $10,864,753, an increased recommendation for the statewide lines of $5,993,232, for a total increase of $59,789,347, which is an overall increase of 3.27%. I'll be glad to, and there you can see how it is broken out by actual each individual institution, along with what they actually requested. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Cagle. Chair entertains a motion to approve the consolidated budget recommendation for fiscal year 2021 to 2022.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, since the RC&D and Soil and Water Conservation Committee requests also were included in the consolidated budget recommendations, I would like to abstain from voting on this item as well.
All in favor of approving, say aye.
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 And all opposed, like sign. The consolidated budget recommendation for fiscal year 2021-2022 is approved.
Mr. Chairman, I abstain.
The consolidated budget recommendation for fiscal year 2021-2022 is approved. Let the record show that Commissioner Kennedy abstained. Our next decision item is D, the report on facilities master plan and capital projects requests for fiscal year 2021-2022, through fiscal year 2025 through 2026, presented by Ms. Cagle.
Starting on page 24 of your packet, you'll find the report on the Facilities Master Plan and Capital Projects request. The summary tables start on page 34. This report is required by section 16515 of the State Code of Alabama, which requires the institutions to submit a 5-year master plan to the commission. The report is broken into 3 time segments: immediate, intermediate, and long-term, and further broken into 4 project categories: new construction, renovation, major capital equipment, and deferred maintenance. Almost $1.4 billion was requested in immediate capital project requests for fiscal year 2021-2022. 48% of the funds are for other than new construction, and 38% or over $515 million are projected to use ETF funds. For the 5-year period that this report covers, almost $5 billion in funds are being projected to be needed to cover the proposed capital projects of all of the 4 and 2-year public institutions. Almost $2.4 billion of the projected funds would go for maintenance, alterations, or repairs of existing facilities or equipment. Although it seems like new buildings are constantly being put up on college campuses, I'd like to point out that many of the buildings are being used by the institutions could hardly be described as new. Almost 40% of the buildings were built between 1960 and 1989, and an additional 13% were built prior to 1960. When you consider that many of these buildings are close to or beyond the useful life of the major building components, there really shouldn't be any surprise at the significant request for capital funds to deal with the repairs and renovations. I would also like to remind you, as I usually do when I do this report, that there is no regular capital funding for capital projects for education institutions from the state of Alabama. This includes not only the colleges and universities, but also K-12. In other words, the state does, in a lot of states, they have an actual capital fund for education. Alabama does not. So in order to find money to fund these projects, such as the ones listed in the report, the institutions have to rely on funding sources such as grants, endowment funds, institutional capital campaigns. General obligation bond issues are also occasionally passed by the state of Alabama, of which higher education usually receives a portion. During the 2020 regular legislative session, such a bond issue was passed for $1.25 billion. Of this amount, the universities are to receive $218 million, and the 2-year colleges, $120 million. The ETF Advancement and Technology Fund is also now becoming a regular source of funds for capital projects. However, as these 2 funding sources are not consistent sources of funding, in order to pay for capital projects, the institutions must find funds from other sources. One of these is bonds. The institutions in Alabama are allowed to float their own bond issues. And this is a major source of funding for these institutionally, for these projects. On page 40 and 41 of your packet, you'll see a table showing the amount of revenue bonds that have been issued by Alabama public higher education institutions. As you can see, the current amount of outstanding bond issue is about $4.4 billion. These bonds, of course, have to be paid back, and the debt service owed on these bonds was about $622 million as of September 30th. The major source of payments for debt service of these two is the tuition or fees that are charged to the students. Staff would like to request that the commission accept the report on Facilities Master Plan.
Excellent. Any questions for Ms. Cagle? Great, thank you. Thank you for that report. I just want to remind everybody, all the commissioners and anybody on the Zoom call, to please mute your volume just so the speaker can be clearly heard. At this time, the chair entertains a motion to approve the report on facilities master plan and capital projects requests for fiscal year 2021 through 2022 through fiscal year 2025-2026.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The report on facilities master plan and capital projects request for fiscal year 2021-2022 through fiscal year 2025-2026 is approved. Our next decision item will be coming into our academic programs. Our first program will be presented by Dr. McGill, Alabama A&M University, Master of Public Administration in Public Administration.
Okay, good morning again, everyone. There are a lot of academic programs, so we'll try to go through them pretty quickly here. As the chairman mentioned, we're first considering Alabama A&M University's MPA in Public Administration. They're proposing a program with 4 concentrations in organizational development and governance, emergency management, criminal justice administration, and homeland security administration. They're intending to seek accreditation from the network of schools of public policy, affairs, and administration, also known as NASPA. And they will draw faculty and resources from their existing programs for Master of Business Administration, Master of Urban and Regional Planning, and other undergraduate and graduate degree programs. They're proposing 3 additional faculty and a staff position to deliver this program. AIC staff recommends approval for the program and offers it for your consideration.
Thank you, Dr. McGill. Any questions for Dr. McGill at this time? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Our next program will be presented by Dr. McGill, Athens State University, Bachelor of Fine Arts in Art.
Great. So the BFA in Art is proposed by Athens State with the intention of replacing 2 of the options from their existing Bachelor of Arts in Art, BA in Art, and adding 2 additional concentrations. All of these would have a studio focus, and those 4 are ceramics, painting and drawing, graphic design, and multimedia design. Because this is drawing from an existing program, we have added 1 additional post-implementation condition that they maintain program viability for the existing BA in Art. This program is emerging out of partnership with Calhoun Community College, with whom Athens State shares facilities. They have both participate in the Alabama Center for the Arts, that is a studio facility and performance facility. And for this particular proposal, the 2 institutions are offering a joint faculty position who will be hired to support this program. Later, we'll see Calhoun proposing a visual communication program, and both of these are sort of related to each other. Based on the proposal, staff is recommending approval of the program.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair
Not a question, but a comment. I'm pleased to see the shared use of the physical property, plant, and equipment in this proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. Any other questions? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
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 And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Our second program for Athens will be presented by Dr. McGill, also Master of Science in Strategic Healthcare Management and Administration.
Great, thank you, Chairman Bunton. This program, the MS in Strategic Healthcare Management and Administration, is a sort of hybrid program that has a business leadership focus that is combined with healthcare administration. It includes professional certification by the National Society of Leadership and Success. Athens State is proposing to have the entire program accredited through the Commission on Accreditation of Healthcare Management Education. And for that reason, we've added one extra post-implementation condition that over the next 7 years, the program needs to show that accreditation coming through or substantial process toward that. There is a program at the University of Alabama, Huntsville, that is also healthcare administration, but by comparison, this program has that split business focus and is also more aimed at working professionals who may be pursuing the degree part-time. So for that reason, staff is recommending approval.
Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Our next program will be presented by Dr. McGill, Auburn University, Bachelor of Science in Genetics.
Thank you. Auburn University has a strong expertise in genetics and genomics that they have developed already for existing programs, most specifically the Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Sciences and the Bachelor of Science in Microbial, Molecular, and Cell Biology. So for this particular program, they will not need to hire any additional new faculty. Graduates of the program will potentially be seeking employment in agriculture and crop development related fields, which fits with Auburn's land grant mission. Because this program may draw students from the existing Bachelor of Science programs, we have added one post-implementation condition that Auburn must, and I don't think they'll have trouble with this, maintain viability for their BS in biomedical sciences. That program enrolls several hundred students a year, so I don't think it'll be a big lift for them. And with that, the staff is recommending approval.
Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Second program for Auburn will be presented by Dr. McGill, Doctor of Philosophy in Industrial and Organizational Psychology, Substantive Modification.
Yeah, so this particular item and the one that follows it, we don't frequently see at commission meetings, but these might be considered two kind of cleanup items. And the idea here is that both programs, this one and the one following, were offered under a shared instructional code, which we call CIP code, and that they want to have their own entry. And for that, they need a substantive modification, and they need to be able to demonstrate that they have met viability minimums for those programs. For the PhD in Industrial and Organizational Psychology, Auburn University is the only university in Alabama that is offering such a program. They are proposing to move the CIP code to its own more appropriately named code 42.2804. And they already deliver a Master of Science at that same code in industrial and organizational psychology. The program as currently delivered demonstrates graduates on average of 3.8 per year, which exceeds the minimum viability of 2.25 for doctoral programs. And as such, the staff is recommending approval.
Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the substantive modification to Auburn University Doctor of Philosophy in Industrial and Organizational Psychology program.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
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 And all opposed, like sign. The program modification is approved. The third program for Auburn will be presented by Dr. McGill, Master of Education in Clinical Rehabilitation Counseling, substantive modification.
Thank you. Similar to the one we just discussed, this program shares an instructional code with other programs, specifically special education general, or other, that's a CIP 131099. This program at Auburn for clinical rehabilitation counseling is looking to move to the code 512310, which is vocational rehabilitation counseling, much more aligned with the content that's being delivered. This program has already received a specialized accreditation from the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Programs, CACREP. Over the past several years, the program has demonstrated graduates of, on average, 12.8 per year. For viability purposes, they only need to show 3.75, so they're well above that. And so the staff is recommending approval of this modification.
Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the modification to Auburn University Master of Education in Clinical Rehabilitation Counseling program.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
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 And all opposed, like sign. The program modification is approved. Our next program will be presented by Dr. McGill, Auburn University at Montgomery, Master of Science in Speech Language Pathology.
Thank you. Auburn University of Montgomery already has a Bachelor of Science in Communication Disorders, which this will relate to and extend to the master's level. They intend to seek accreditation specifically for the program from the Council on Accreditation in Audiology and Speech Language Pathology. For this particular field, professional licensure of graduates is required, and we have added an additional post-implementation condition that aligns with those requirements for graduate employment, which is that 80% of the graduates from the program must pass their Praxis subject test that will allow them to complete their clinical work and achieve professional licensure. The employment in this particular field is aligned with Alabama's list of in-demand occupations, and this would be the only program in the state. There are 6 other programs, but the only one that is delivered all of its coursework online, which is supplemented by clinical rotations and simulated activities. AUM intends to hire 1 additional faculty member and produce 6.2 graduates per year. And staff is recommending approval.
Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Our next program will be presented by no other, Dr. McGill, University of Alabama Doctor of Philosophy in Health Education and Promotion.
Thank you. This program should be understood together with the following two programs, both of which are at UAB. These three programs together were until recently a joint program, which was a PhD in Health Education and Promotion. The two institutions decided to dissolve that joint program, largely because over the past several years, students were more or less enrolling in one program and not really crossing over institutions. So they were already operating as separate programs. The University of Alabama's program is delivered through their College of Human Environmental Sciences, and it would be a joint, a PhD in Health Education and Promotion. Upon completion of the degree, students can pursue employment in academia or also in practice fields. They can sit for the exam to become a certified health education specialist, and the University of Alabama is proposing to keep the same curriculum that's been offered and produce 5 graduates per year. And based on that, staff is recommending approval.
Great. Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Our next program will be presented by Dr. McGill, University of Alabama at Birmingham, Bachelor of Science in Behavioral Nutrition and Wellness.
But we're actually going to put that one, we're going to put a couple of places later. This one is the Doctor of Philosophy in Community Health Promotion.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay.
Yeah, we made a switcheroo in the agenda.
Okay,
Here we
okay.
go. So this PhD in Community Health Promotion is the University of Alabama at Birmingham's similar degree to the one that we just approved for the University of Alabama. It's offered through its School of Education, and it will largely be the same curriculum as the existing joint degree program. The graduates of this program can sit for the Certified Health Education Specialist exam, and UAB is projecting 5 graduates per year. Staff is recommending approval.
Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Was that a commissioner opposing? Or was that a late approval? Tell you what, I'm gonna back up and I'm gonna do this again, okay? We have a motion and a second to approve. No further questions. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Okay. Dr. McGill, which one are we going to next?
Yes, the next one is the Doctor of Philosophy
Okay.
in Health Behavior, also
Wonderful.
at UAB.
Okay.
This program is the third piece of the joint program that was dissolved. This program is offered by UAB's School of Public Health, which is accredited by the Council of Education in Public Health, and this would be only one of 5 PhD programs in health behavior offered in the country. In comparison with the previous 2 programs that were approved, this one has a greater focus on quantitative research into the behavioral aspects of public health. Similar to the other programs, UAB is projecting 5 graduates per year, and staff is recommending approval.
Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. So Dr. McGill, are we going back to?
The Bachelor of Science in Biobehavioral Nutrition and Wellness.
Okay, go ahead. You've got the floor.
Absolutely. So this program will extend offerings that UAB already has at the undergraduate level for a minor in nutrition to a full baccalaureate of science. And this will also link with programs UAB offers at the graduate level, specifically an MS in nutrition sciences and a PhD in nutrition sciences. Those graduate programs are designed to lead to licensure as a registered dietitian nutritionist, which is the direction the field is going, where a graduate degree is needed for licensure. UAB is setting up this undergraduate program as a feeder for those. They are planning to add one additional faculty person and a staff person and achieve a rate of 7.5 graduates per year. Staff is recommending approval.
Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Our next program will be presented by Ms. White, Calhoun Community College, Associate of Applied Science of Criminal Justice, in Criminal Justice.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Stretch now, you can all celebrate. This proposed program will be implemented in the spring. Calhoun is projecting an annual average enrollment of at least 15.5 students. Projected job openings are based on the current occupational employment statistics estimate of the current workforce in 3 specific job areas of criminal justice, which is correctional officers, police and criminal investigators, and patrol and sheriff's officers. And the national projected growth in those fields is projected at 7%. Calhoun currently has a short-term certificate in security and an Associate of Science concentration in criminal justice, so no additional funds will be needed to start this program. They're projecting a total of $352,000 will be available through tuition. Staff is recommending approval of this program.
Any questions for Ms. White? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
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 And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Our second program for Calhoun Community College will be presented by Ms. White, Associate of Applied Science in Visual Communications, Multimedia Production Technology.
This program is also proposed to be implemented in the spring. They are projecting an average new enrollments of at least 12. This degree will build on Calhoun's current short-term certificate in multimedia production technology. So it will utilize courses that are already being offered at the college. No additional costs are anticipated in the early years of the program, but by year 4 or 5, they're anticipating an additional full-time faculty member will need to be hired. And the University of North Alabama offers a BFA in Cinematic Arts and Theater, but there are no community colleges in the region that offer a similar degree. Staff is recommending approval of this program.
Any questions for Ms. White? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Our next program will be presented by Ms. White, Enterprise State Community College, Associate of Applied Science in Advanced Composites.
Okay, this proposed program will also be implemented in the spring, and Enterprise is projecting an annual average new enrollment of at least 11.5 students. Enterprise was selected by the Institute for Advanced Composites Manufacturing Innovation to participate in the Manufacturing Education Extension Program. And this is a 3-year, $5 million grant to expand upon existing composites training programs outside of the state. They are projecting $762,000 in estimated new funds will be required to support the proposed program, and the majority of those funds will be used to hire a full-time member. In the last couple of years, Enterprise has invested around $500,000 renovating the advanced manufacturing building on its Ozark campus in anticipation of this program, so no additional improvements are expected. Staff is recommending approval of this program.
Any questions for Ms. White? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
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 And all opposed, like sign. Program is approved. Our second program for Enterprise State Community College will be presented by Ms. White. Licensed Practical Nurse Certificate.
Okay, this proposed program will also be implemented in the spring, and they are projecting average new enrollment headcount of at least 11.5. There are many community colleges in Alabama that offer LPN programs, including Wallace Dothan, Lurleen B. Wallace, but this program will be unique in that it will have a medical assisting to practical nursing bridge program. So that will help the college meet a growing need for LPNs. They are projecting $2,174,000 in estimated new funds will be required to support the program over the first 7 years. A large portion of that will be used to hire 2 full-time and 3 to 4 part-time faculty for the program. Staff is recommending approval.
This is great. I commend Enterprise State Community College for doing this. There's definitely a need out there. Any further questions to Ms. White? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
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 And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Our next program will be presented by Ms. White, Jefferson State Community College, Associate of Applied Science in Histotechnician.
A new word. It was for me too. This proposed program is projected to be implemented in the spring. They are projecting an average new enrollment headcount of at least 11. This program will prepare students to prepare and process tissue samples and perform routine histologic procedures and tests. Currently, there are no colleges within the state offering associate's or bachelor's degrees in histology or related fields, and there is a significant industry need for individuals with specialized lab training in histology. The proposal projects $873,000 in estimated new funds will be required to support this program over the first 7 years. A large portion of those funds will be used to hire 1 full-time and 2 part-time faculty, and there will be around $350,000 costs in new equipment in the first year of the program. Staff is recommending approval of this program.
Any questions for Ms. White?
I think it's a great program. I did want to ask, how is this need currently being fulfilled right now? What kind of talents is available out there?
I believe from the proposal, it's on-the-job training. So they're taking people with degrees, and these companies are training them to be technicians.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Ms. White? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Ms. White, very good job.
Thank you.
Lastly, we have 2 requests to amend post-implementation conditions that will be presented by Dr. McGill. First will be Auburn University at Montgomery.
Hey, thank you, Chairman Bunton. Before I go through the post-implementation requests, I do just want to draw your attention to the fact that there are program deletions. This particular go-around, there are 9 program inventory deletions that are under information items, and many of those have to do with programs that didn't meet viability or were otherwise voluntarily closed by institutions. And we have only 2 programs offering or requesting to extend their programs because of needing to meet their post-implementation conditions. The first one is Auburn University at Montgomery. They are proposing to extend the time for implementing the Master of Science in Geographic Information Systems. They implemented this program back in 2015 at the same time as a BS in GIS. And at the time there was a program director that was very active and enrollments were very high. But that program director unfortunately passed away and the program sort of lulled. In the past couple of years, AUM has hired 3 additional faculty members, and they have chosen to go ahead and close the BS and GIS and focus their efforts on the MS and getting that up to its minimum viability and exceeding that. So they are requesting an additional 2 years of post-implementation to meet those conditions, and staff is recommending approval.
Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The request to amend post-implementation conditions is approved. Next will be Troy University Master of Arts in Economics.
Thank you, Chairman. This item from Troy University is also an extension request of 2 years to meet the post-implementation condition for average new enrollments for the program. You'll see from the report below that Troy did meet just right on the nose the average graduate requirement of 3.75. But we wanted to make sure that they were going to continue producing graduates from the program at the viable level. And so we recommended that they apply for this extension of 2 years. And staff is recommending approval.
Any questions for Dr. McGill? Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Now we move into the informational items. Items 1 through 7 are normally accepted or not accepted by the commission as a whole. I think we probably all agree that we'd like to do this as a whole, so the chair entertains a motion to approve the items collectively.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or further comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
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 And all opposed, like sign. The information items are accepted. Wonderful. And just right before we adjourn, I just wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays. I hope everybody stays safe. Hopefully in March, we will be on North Union Street in Montgomery all together. But if not, we will be Zooming again, and that will be okay as well. But At this time, the chair entertains a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second motion. Any questions or further comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.